All right, let's now shift our attention to the other big story that we are tracking on WION, and this, of course, has got to do with the state of Israel. United in times of war, the two allies appear to be divided on the road to peace. Israel has now publicly rejected Washington's proposal of a two-state solution. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says that he has told the United States of America that he opposes the establishment of a Palestinian state after the conflict in Gaza ends. Listen in.
I tell this truth to our American friends, and I also stop the attempt to impose a reality on us that would harm Israel's security. A prime minister in Israel should be able to say no, even to our best friends. Say no when necessary, and say yes when possible.
Now, these remarks come as no surprise as Netanyahu has opposed the issue of Palestinian statehood much of his political life, but the very public rebuttal of Washington's diplomatic overtures also reflects a widening split between Israel and its Western allies. Remember, Netanyahu's comments have come even as the United States asserts that only statehood for Palestine can resolve the regional challenges, including that of security for Israel.
Conflict, as all conflicts do, will end at some point, and that there needs to be a political path forward for the establishment of a Palestinian state. That is the only way, not just to answer the legitimate hopes, dreams, aspirations of the Palestinian people, but it is also, and this is critical, the only way to provide lasting security for the Israeli people.
Netanyahu once again said that the war will go on for many months to come, asserting that Israel has in fact destroyed two-thirds of the Hamas's fighting regiments in the Gaza Strip. But the Israeli War Cabinet Minister, Gadi Eisenkot, has contradicted Netanyahu's remarks, criticizing Netanyahu's vow to completely defeat Hamas. He's called such rhetoric as unrealistic. But as the death toll mounts in Gaza, Western allies are now pressing Israel to exercise some level of restraint, even though the Americans still continue to arm Israel. Now, the White House has repeatedly tried to influence Israel's military policy, urging for more precision-guided weapons instead of blanket air strikes, besides calling for a two-state solution in the post-conflict Gaza. But so far, Washington's advice has been met with outright rejection by the Israeli Prime Minister. All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we're being joined by retired Colonel Rich Outson, who's a senior fellow in the Atlantic Council and the Jamestown Foundation, is joining us now on this broadcast. Now, Colonel Outson, let me begin by asking you, by quoting what the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said, that he says that an Israeli Prime Minister should be able to say no to this policy advice that's coming from the United States, where the United States is urging for a two-state solution. So what Netanyahu is saying no to is a two-state solution to resolve the conflict between Israel and Palestine. How do you read the statement by the Israeli Prime Minister?
Well, it's good to be with you. I think in a technical sense, he's right. Every country should, on matters of great import to its security, be able to say no to any other country. However, a friend like the United States that does provide massive amounts of support, military, diplomatic, political, to Israel, should also be able to insist on certain things. So when two sides disagree, then there needs to be sort of a negotiation among friends. And I think that's what you're seeing unfold. The United States over the past months has been saying, okay, we understand Jerusalem, you need to come up with a military strategy to remove the threat that exploded on you on October 7th. But that will mean nothing if you don't come up with a political strategy so that this does not happen again. I've spoken with many Israelis who are actually glad to have the United States pressing for this, for a political vision. And does a two-state solution take place overnight? Does it happen in a number of months or years? No, I don't think. There's so many deep obstacles to the erection of a Palestinian state that that's not an easy or a quick solution. But if you don't discuss the political life of Palestinians, give them some alternative to Hamas, then once you crush Hamas militarily, it's just a matter of time until it resuscitates, because there's no new political horizon. So I think the United States is doing what it needs to. I think it's actually good for the state of Israel that it do so, but Netanyahu, as long as he's in government and in charge of the Israeli government, is certainly entitled to say no.
Right. Now, how much further do you think the Americans would be willing to back the policy of Netanyahu, when Netanyahu has gone on record and said that this war will in fact continue for many more months to come? According to him, Israel has been able to destroy two-thirds of the Hamas regiments, and there is more work that Israel needs to do But looking at the humanitarian catastrophe that's at this moment unfolding in the Gaza Strip, how much longer do you think Washington will back Tel Aviv?
Well, there's two questions there, and I think we need to deal with them separately. The first is, as long as there is a threat from rockets, from tunnels, from the extant infrastructure of terror in Gaza, the United States will support Israel going after it. And even though, especially in the north of Gaza, the ability of Hamas to function at a brigade and a battalion level has been greatly eroded, the fact is it can still operate at the level of small teams. Just as an example, when relief supplies and aid, humanitarian aid comes in, as soon as it's across the border, currently, Hamas operatives are seizing control of it and deciding where the distribution goes. That needs to stop. And, and I think Israel will have to stay for some months to ensure that that can't be done. Now, on the other hand, the United States does not have inexhaustible patience on the provision of humanitarian aid. So I can tell you that the U.S. government is pressing very hard now for Israel to allow more aid to go in so that the average Gazan, not the Hamas fighters, but the average Gazan is not on the verge of starvation. And our patience for that is not going to last forever. You'll see more pressure from the United States on that I think has already begun.
All right, my final question to you, Colonel, is this. Now, Netanyahu is a very seasoned politician, is the longest-serving prime minister in Israel. But when he says that he rejects the possibility of a two-state solution, then what is the solution to this crisis? Is he suggesting a one-state solution? Would that something be acceptable to Israel?
Well, there's many people who are ardent supporters of the idea of the state of Israel and want a healthy Israel. Most of them believe that long-term, Israel cannot continue to live side by side with stateless people. So that leaves you the options of having what amounts to a second-class status for these people in perpetuity, or to drive them all out, or at some point to recognize that the Palestinians do need a national life as expressed in a state. Now, I'm one of those who thinks that that will happen, but it will take a long time. Let's remember that when the Jews returned to the land of Israel, it took not decades, but centuries for them to resurrect their state. They had all been expelled from the land in 131 AD by the Romans after the Bar Kokhba revolt. So I think for a Palestinian state, Israel's going to have to come to grips with it sooner or later, but I also think it's going to take decades at the soonest for the basic pieces of a state to be put into place.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Colonel Loudson, for joining us and getting us that perspective then.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.